want to begin this Sunday by asking you one of those deep questions that maybe you've pondered at least once in your life when you're feeling reflective. Have you ever found yourself wondering, is there more to life than what I currently know? I mean, have you ever wondered that? At least once in our life, surely we have. You know, in our reflective moments, in our moments of quiet. Maybe it's 2 a.m. and you're just kind of in the stillness of the night, reflecting on your life. And you say, gosh, is there more to life than what I currently know? We get so busy and so married to our task and our to-do list and all these different things that it's easy to kind of put that question aside. And yet I'm convinced that for many of us, in those reflective moments, questions like that, those big life questions, tend to bubble up to the surface. Is there more to life than what I currently know? We all kind of wonder that. And some of that comes from a sense of maybe we're not doing enough. Maybe there's more we could do in life. Maybe there's more that we could be a part of in life. And we feel like an emptiness inside it. Is there really more? Could there be more to life than this? And it comes out of that emptiness. I read this week a psychologist did a book a few years ago, fairly recently, on a study that he called a phenomenon that he labeled as real, because through his study that this is a real thing that has been growing over the last 20 plus years, and that is a fear of insignificance. Whole book written on the study, the fear of insignificance, which is to say that human beings have a fear that at the end of life we're going to look back and say, I didn't do anything important. I was insignificant. No one will remember me. We all carry with us this fear to some degree or another of insignificance. And so we spend our time in that fear, and out of the emptiness, we fill it with many things, right? You know, we go for that next degree. I'm about to do that myself. We fill the resume list. We get the experiences. You know, we want the resume to be a mile long of how important we are and the accolades. And all of that is wonderful. But in those moments of reflection where we ask, is there more to life? We kind of realize that maybe all those accolades and achievements and degrees and important things we spend our time doing, maybe they're not as important as we think. I think I've told you before, David Brooks is one of my favorite New York Times columnists, probably my favorite one of all. And he wrote a column a couple years ago that's just always stuck with me. And I think because it's so profound, the topic that he wrote on. But he wrote about the difference between a resume list and a eulogy list. And he said that we're programmed as Americans from an early age to build that resume list. I think I've shared this with you at least a while back. That resume list, you know, we want to be important and achieve and to do, right? And we spend from an early age, you know, you're 12 years old. Are you not working on your college application yet? We've got to do this for the resume. And what he said was, what's interesting is, and I've been to many funerals in my life, conducted a number of them, at end of life, more times than not, that resume list that we spend so much emotional energy and years and all working on, it's kind of a byline in the funeral. And do you know what's lifted up instead of that? The eulogy list. Were they kind? Did they give of themselves? Did they love their family, their community? Did they serve others? Those moments of life that are seemingly insignificant, that we kind of overlook because we're so busy achieving, you know, where we spend a little extra time loving someone, or a little more time without even realizing it maybe, investing in someone. Those are the stories, I guarantee you, and there are many preachers in the room, those are the stories that we hear about sitting around the kitchen table when we ask the family, tell us about so-and-so. What can I say in the eulogy? It's not, here's the list. I mean, you could write that stuff down and hand it to them. But those are the stories that make your life significant. The eulogy list. As Christians, I am convinced we are called to cultivate our eulogy list more. Paul is addressing the Colossians. This is a relatively newer church plant in Paul's day. He's writing to newer Christians. They're kind of newer to the faith, and he's kind of coaching them a little bit on how they can grow in their faith and make faith an everyday importance, priority in their life. And he begins by telling them to set your mind on things above. What does that look like? To set your mind on things above, not things below. Maybe we do worry too much about temporal things. I mean, it's not that those things are not important. We need to eat. We need clothing. We need housing. We need these various things. But when do we let the worry over those temporal things become too much? You know, like we need to earn a living to provide a life. But then somewhere along the way, we begin to hoard everything that we're earning because we're so afraid that we're going to lose it somewhere. Or we need to achieve to further ourselves in life, and that's a good thing. But what happens when we sacrifice a relationship along the way? Set your mind on things above, things rooted in love, generosity, investing in the things of life that, in the grand scheme of things, matter the most. Finding balance, maybe, for those of us overachievers in the room. Finding balance. And maybe finding a way to resist the temptation to let our minds and our energy and our attention get too distracted on things that don't matter as much. I don't know. Set your mind on things above. Paul goes on to say to the Colossians that they are to live as though Christ is revealed in them. Then we will be revealed in Christ. That line alone hit me in the gut. I don't know about you, but what if I were to sit and look at the course of my everyday, like starting with tomorrow and everything I'm going to do, and ask myself the question, how is Christ revealed in me throughout Monday? How would that change the way I look at things that I need to do, want to do, have to do? How would that call into question the things that I let suck a little too much of my time and emotional energy, but it's hard to resist them? To say everything you do, from the moment you wake up in the morning, everything you do in that day reveals to others Christ. I've told you one of my favorite Thomas Merton quotes of all time is that we are to be windows through which the light of Christ shines through us. How would that change the way you live your daily life, to know that everything you do reveals Christ? I have a friend I love to learn from because he's just got life together so much better than me sometimes. And he said he likes, if he can remember this, he likes to tell himself that every day that he just picks something, maybe it's the service industry, and he says to himself, every checkout line I go through, every drive-through I go through, every service person that I encounter on the day, my goal is to be the friendliest, over-the-top friendliest person they've met all day. And I said, really, isn't that kind of annoying? And he said, no, because years ago I worked in the service industry. And I'm going to tell you, those people catch more garbage from people in the course of a day than you and I do in a month. So he said, I tell myself I'm going to go through that drive-through and be the friendliest person that they've ever seen that day. I used to have a boss who used to do this. He was a pharmacist. I worked for an independent pharmacy, and God, he was so goofy sometimes. But he would answer the phone. We had caller ID, which was the cheat, because the sweet little old ladies didn't know he had caller ID. So he saw who it was on the phone, and he'd pick up the phone, if he could grab it and had a free moment. He knew it was Miss So-and-so. And he had these unique little like jingles he would sing, Miss So-and-so, or he'd use their name and rhyme it with something. Just the goofiest stuff you've ever imagined. But you know what it was? For me, it was this interesting lesson that for Miss So-and-so that day, that may have been the only human contact she had all day. And for her, it was one wrapped in joy. And it mattered. And for just 2 minutes of calling in a prescription, right? I mean, the most mundane thing ever, Miss So-and-so had her spirits lifted. What if just the most routine parts of your day, you just said, I want to give someone joy? Like, I'll go out of my way to do it because odds are they probably aren't receiving that. And Christ is revealed through you. That That when you focus on spreading joy, you set your mind on things that are above. And for just a moment, worried a little less about the things that are below. There are lots of things. Paul names off a number of things below that get us all wrapped up. Hurt, disappointment. Anger is one. We live in a world that thrives off of anger. You know, I've told y'all before, one of my biggest gripes with cable news is it's an actual industry built on anger. Because it's figured out, we will watch as long as we possibly can if it can stir up enough anger inside of us. And we say, I don't want to be angry. But the truth is we kind of do. Because it makes us feel alive. It brings up passion, right? And passion makes you feel alive. But what if we could turn to the other side of the coin and say, instead of anger today, I'm going to focus on joy. This is why, you know, the Friday, like if you're watching CBS Evening News, I forget the guy's name, but this is why on Friday, the wonderful things about the evening news on the networks, you ever notice what the last segment on a Friday is? It's always the feel-good segment of the week. You ever notice that? It's like the story of a guy who rescues a kitten from a tree. Or the lady who just very humbly served, 5,000 children over the course of her life. But you hear these stories. You know why you get that on Friday? Because after a week of anger, the network is figuring by that point you need a little bit of joy. And maybe Paul is telling the Colossians and telling us too that maybe we don't have to wait until Friday for joy to be a focus in our life. I don't know. What is it for you that could be different if you set your mind on things that are above? Paul names a number of things that our lives really, for all of us, there are many ways in which our lives need a sense of renewal. Because over time in our human brokenness and in our human experience, things happen to us, mistakes we make, and we carry them with us like a weight around our ankles. And that there's a process of renewal that has to happen, that Paul says as you take off this old life and its practices, you then take on new life that is in Christ. That whole image, you know what it made me think of this week? A mulch pile. Do any of y'all have a mulch pile at home in your garden? My mom, I've told you before, is a master gardener, just an avid gardener. And guess whose job it was from an early age to mind the mulch pile? Every day I was taking eggshells, I'm taking scraps of this, I'm taking all these degradable things. It's disgusting. And she says, go take the butt. She had this whole thing. And in the backyard, she created a mulch pile. And I'd take the scraps and you throw them out there. And you know what the science of a mulch pile is? Some of you are looking at me funny like you don't know what a mulch pile is. I'm a city kid and even I know what a mulch pile is, but let me explain. You're throwing degradable things on dirt, and over time as you stir and move it around, they get taken into the ground, and what comes up in its place is soil or something that you can put with plants, but it's better, it's enriched, it's got extra vitamins, it's got all this wonderful stuff, and it brings new life as you use that mulch to plant new things. And maybe there are things in our life, hurt and disappointment, mistakes, anger, bitterness that we're carrying with us that maybe by the power of God, if we could just put into that mulch pile and have stirred over time, that new life could grow out of it. That maybe anger can be mulched over time. I'm sure there's a word for it that's not mulched, but I'm going to use mulched as a verb. It's mulched. But maybe anger can be mulched into empathy. Or instead of our first reaction to be angry, that maybe we empathize with someone else. Maybe hurt and disappointment can be mulched over time into hope and perseverance. Maybe our mistakes that we think define us over time can be mulched into character. And then we begin to live the lives we were made for. Then we begin to answer the question, is there more to life than everything I know? Yes. You were made for so much more. You were made for so much more. That every day we drop these negative things and we take on new life. That by the power of God we become a people who focus less on anger and more on hope and joy and cultivate that in our daily lives. Andy Stanley says, do for one what you wish you could do for all. What if you went into every day of your life and you said, I wish I could save the world, and I know I can't, so why even try? What if you said, I can't save the world, but I can help save one? You know that old parable, the guy with the starfish on the beach, and all the starfish have washed up on the beach, and he's tossing them in one at a time. And the guy comes along and he says to him, all these starfish, you're not going to save them all. I mean, why are you even trying? And he'll take one and he'll toss it and he'll say, I saved that one. I saved that one. That seemingly small things in your daily life can add to God's work of salvation in the world. That in and through your life, you can give of yourself to important things that, yes, won't save the world in and of themselves, but will help toward that effort. That we can be a little less angry and instead be filled with hope. I had an ending written to my sermon, and then the news breaks out that, all these terrible mass shootings again in America just in the last 24 hours. And I wake up this morning, I didn't even know about the one in Ohio. Maybe you saw that first thing this morning. And of course, I'm looking at that, and, like most of us do, I go to Facebook, pretty early in the morning, and I'm reading through, and I'm friends with lots of preachers. We do tend to like each other most of the time. And everyone in the distress, and you don't know what to do in the face of tragedy, right? And in the distress, what should we do? We should be angry about this, or we should speak out for this. It's time to change policies. And my answer to it is yes, to all of it. Is it time to change policies? Yes, that's above my pay grade. I'm not sure how to do that, but yes, smart people need to get together and say, this is too often, too much. This is not what we are as a country. But is that the only thing? No, there's so much more we can be doing too. We don't outsource the work of making peace in this world to Congress. Lord knows they're terrible at getting most anything done if you expect them to make peace happen. We encourage them, but we take that work on ourselves. That in your daily life, you be a peacemaker. You invest in someone. Teachers are getting ready to go back to school and filled with all kinds of stress and anxiety. The summer's too short. It always is. And yet you will show up and stand in the gap for many children to influence their lives. I named, by the way, in the announcements, this is a little plug. You want to help somebody, you want to make peace in this world, you want to be an agent of change, if you own a truck, you can take bags to Gadsden Elementary. And I'm going to tell you something, that seems small, but over 50 children every week eat over the weekend because of what we give them. And you can be the front line of that help. We're launching a youth group at this church. Can you believe it? I've heard about this for 3 years now. That was a great desire of this church, and we're going to do it. We are going to launch a youth group, but we're going to need volunteers. And there are some of you that have raised youth, and they're long gone now. There's some of you who are just gifted with young people. And you have the opportunity to give of yourself to say, I will invest in the life of this child. Should we be angry over terrible tragedies? Yes. Lord knows yes. But should we live in that anger and let it hold us down? No. But that's often what happens. This is where hope is born. St. Augustine said hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and the courage to change the way things are. One starfish at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time, you have the opportunity as you get rid of these things that hold you back and take on that new mulched life. You have the opportunity to live by the power of God for so much more than you could have ever imagined. What a gift. Thanks be to God.